My husband left me in the rain 37 mi from home. He said I needed a lesson. I didn't argue. I just watched him drive away. A black truck pulled up moments later. My bodyguard stepped out calm and ready. I smiled as I climbed in. His cruelty had ended. This was his last mistake. I pressed record on my phone and slipped it into my jacket pocket as Andrew's Mercedes rolled into the empty rest stop. The rain hadn't started yet, but the air felt heavy with it. "Get out," he said without looking at me. "You need to learn respect, Amanda. Maybe walking home will teach you that." 37 miles. He'd chosen this place deliberately. Too far for a ride share, too isolated for any bus route. What Andrew didn't know was that I'd been documenting everything for 8 months, and Marcus was already waiting behind the abandoned gas station with his black Ford, ready for my signal. The leather seat creaked as I turned to face my husband. His jaw was set in that expression I knew too well, the same one he wore when he crushed a competitor at his hedge fund. 3 hours ago, we'd been at Morton's Steakhouse celebrating our anniversary. Now he was dumping me on a desolate highway because I'd questioned where $10,000 had gone from our joint account. "You're actually doing this," I said, keeping my voice level so the phone would capture every word clearly. "Actions have consequences," he replied. "You called my accountant behind my back. You embarrassed me with your paranoid accusations. Maybe a long walk in the rain will remind you who controls the money in this marriage." I thought about the pearl earring I'd found under our bed 2 days ago. Nayen's earring. The $10,000 had probably bought her something expensive, but I didn't mention it. Not yet. Everything had to happen in the right sequence, exactly as Marcus and I had rehearsed. "It's going to storm," I said, gesturing toward the darkening clouds. "Then you'd better start walking." His fingers tapped the steering wheel impatiently. "Unless you want to apologize right now and admit you were wrong to question me. 6 months ago, I would have apologized. 6 months ago, I still believed the marriage could be saved, that Andrew would change if I just tried harder. That was before I discovered the second set of books for his company, before the mysterious transfers, before I realized he'd been systematically moving our assets into accounts only he controlled. The moment I'd started asking questions, he'd turned vicious. Tonight was his escalation. It was also his fatal error. "I'll walk," I said, opening the car door. The night air hit my face. "Smart choice," Andrew said. "Maybe by the time you get home, you'll remember your place in this relationship." I stepped onto the cracked asphalt. The rest stop had been abandoned for years, just a dark building with boarded windows and a parking lot slowly being swallowed by weeds. Andrew had chosen it specifically for its isolation. He'd mentioned it last week while we were driving past, casually saying, "Imagine being stranded here, miles from anywhere." That's when I knew exactly what he was planning. The Mercedes engine revved. Through the passenger window, I could see him checking his phone, probably texting Nayen that he'd finished teaching his wife a lesson. Then he pulled away, tires squealing on the worn pavement, leaving me standing alone as darkness fell. I counted to 60, watching his taillights disappear around the curve. Then I walked calmly toward the abandoned gas station where Marcus had hidden his black Ford. My brother stepped out, holding an umbrella and a thermos of hot coffee. "Did you get everything?" he asked. "Every word," I said, pulling out my phone and stopping the recording. "He actually told me to remember my place." Marcus shook his head. 3 years of watching him control you was bad enough. But this, he gestured at the empty rest stop, this is criminal abandonment. Rebecca's going to destroy him with this recording. I accepted the coffee gratefully, feeling the warmth spread through my cold hands. The rain was starting now, fat drops hitting the concrete. By morning, Andrew would think I'd spent the night walking through a storm, broken and humiliated. He'd expect to find me huddled on our doorstep, ready to beg his forgiveness. "Valentina's ready," Marcus asked. "She's been monitoring the accounts all evening," I said. "The moment he transferred that $10,000 this afternoon, she documented everything. The forensic audit goes back 2 years. He's been bleeding money into offshore accounts, probably planning to divorce me once he'd hidden enough. And Rebecca's filing the emergency papers at 9 tomorrow morning. Abandonment, financial abuse, fraud. She says with tonight's recording, plus everything else we've gathered, He won't know what hit him. We climbed into Marcus's truck just as the sky opened up, rain hammering against the windshield. I thought about Andrew driving home, satisfied with his cruel lesson, maybe pouring himself expensive scotch to celebrate putting his wife in her place. He had no idea that 8 months ago, when he'd first started hiding money, I'd hired my own team. Marcus had installed cameras throughout our house under the guise of upgrading our security system. Valentina, a forensic accountant who specialized in financial abuse cases, had been tracking every penny Andrew moved. Rebecca, one of the city's most ruthless divorce attorneys, had been building a case file that now filled 3 storage boxes. The house recordings uploaded successfully, Marcus said, checking his phone. We've got him on camera last Tuesday bringing Nayan home while you were visiting your mother. They used your bed, Amanda. I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. Not heartbreak. That had passed months ago. This was pure resolve. Crystalline and unbreakable. He's been planning this escalation for a while, I said. The financial control, the isolation from my friends, the gaslighting. Classic abuse patterns building to this moment. Rebecca says judges take a very dim view of husbands who abandon their wives as punishment. Marcus said as he drove carefully through the storm, taking back roads to avoid any chance of Andrew seeing us. We'd planned this route weeks ago, even doing practice runs at night. Every detail mattered in cases like this. The hotel room was booked under my maiden name. Paid for with cash Marcus had withdrawn gradually over 2 months. The clothes I'd need were already there, along with copies of all our documentation. You know he'll come looking when you don't show up tonight, Marcus said. Let him look, I replied. The hotel security cameras will show me checking in alone. Soaking wet, clearly traumatized. The front desk clerk will testify that I could barely speak. Rebecca coached me on exactly what to say and how to act. 3 years ago, I'd been independent and successful, managing a $30 million portfolio at Henderson Investments. I hadn't been analyzing penny stocks like Andrew told everyone. I'd been handling major accounts, earning my own 6-figure salary. But Andrew had systematically dismantled my life. The promotion I'd turned down because he said the travel would strain our marriage. The investment opportunity I'd identified that would have tripled my personal savings, if I'd still had personal savings by then. The friendship with my college roommate that ended when Andrew convinced me she was jealous of our happiness. He'd rewritten history so many times that sometimes even I forgot who I'd been before him. The gaslighting had been subtle at first. A dinner reservation I'd made that he swore I'd never mentioned. Conversations about visiting my parents that he claimed never happened. My jewelry disappearing, then reappearing in strange places. I'd started writing things down secretly, thinking I was losing my mind. Now I understood it had been calculated psychological warfare. 6 months ago, I'd found the second set of books. Andrew kept them in his home office, locked in a drawer he thought I didn't know about. But I'd watched him open it enough times to figure out the combination. Inside were records of transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands, falsified tax documents, and a prenup he'd forged that would have left me with nothing. That's when I'd contacted Rebecca. She'd immediately brought in Valentina to trace the money, and Marcus had volunteered to handle the surveillance. For 8 months, we documented everything while I played the role of the subdued wife. Every cruel comment Andrew made was recorded. Every dollar he moved was tracked. Every time he brought Nayan to our house was captured on video. Tonight's abandonment was just the final piece of evidence we needed. The act so egregious that no judge could ignore it. The hotel lobby felt impossibly bright after the darkness outside. Water dripped from my hair onto the marble floor as I approached the front desk, letting my hands shake just enough to be convincing. The night clerk, a young woman with concerned eyes, immediately reached for towels. "Oh my God, are you okay?" she asked, rushing around the counter. "My husband," I managed, letting my voice crack exactly as Rebecca had instructed. "He left me at a rest stop. In the storm. I had to walk for miles before someone stopped to help me." Her face shifted from concern to horror, exactly as planned. Every word would be documented in the hotel's incident report, building our case. She guided me to a chair and brought hot tea while processing my check-in. I gave her my maiden name, Amanda Harrison, and paid with the emergency credit card I'd opened 6 months ago, the one Andrew knew nothing about. Room 412 was small but clean, overlooking the city lights blurred by rain. I locked the door, put the chain on, and finally allowed myself to breathe. Then I pulled out my second phone and played back the recording. Andrew's voice filled the room, cold and measured. "You think you're so clever calling my accountant behind my back, asking questions about finances like you'd understand the answers anyway." My own voice, carefully controlled in response. "It's our money, Andrew. I have a right to know where it's going." "Our money?" His laugh was sharp. "I earn it, I manage it. You spend it on overpriced groceries and ridiculous charity lunches." $70 for organic vegetables last week, Amanda. I remembered that shopping trip. I'd bought ingredients for the dinner party he'd insisted on hosting for his clients, the same dinner where he'd spent $800 on wine without blinking. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Valentina found something major, 3 more accounts in the Caymans. He's been moving money for 18 months, 18 months of systematic theft. Another text, this one from Rebecca. "Judge Coleman agreed to emergency hearing tomorrow at 2. Bring the recording." Judge Patricia Coleman had a reputation for seeing through men like Andrew. She'd presided over 3 high-profile financial abuse cases last year, all resulting in favorable outcomes for the wives. Rebecca had specifically waited for her rotation. By morning, my hotel suite had transformed into a command center. Valentina arrived first, wheeling in 2 suitcases full of printed documents. She spread everything across the dining table methodically: bank statements, wire transfer records, falsified tax documents, each stack labeled with color-coded tabs. "The Cayman accounts are frozen as of 9 this morning," she said. "Andrew tried to access them at dawn. 3 failed attempts. He's probably tearing his office apart right now." Rebecca walked in next, phone pressed to her ear, speaking in rapid legal terminology. She ended the call and turned to me with grim satisfaction. "Judge Coleman moved our hearing to 1 o'clock. She wants to address this immediately. Also, Andrew hired Richard Blackwood." "The shark?" Marcus asked, entering with a box of surveillance equipment. "Blackwood doesn't come cheap. Andrew must have liquidated something significant to afford him." Rebecca placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "Blackwood's good, but he can't argue with video evidence and financial records. Plus, he's walking into this completely cold. We've had 8 months to prepare every detail." Marcus connected his laptop to the television and pulled up surveillance footage from our home. "I've compiled the highlights," he said. "Fair warning, Amanda, this isn't easy to watch." The first clip showed Andrew in his study at 2 in the morning 3 weeks ago. I'd been asleep upstairs, knocked out by the sleeping pills he'd started suggesting I take for my anxiety. On screen, Andrew carefully photographed documents from our safe, then placed them back exactly as they were. "He's been creating forgeries with subtle changes," Valentina explained. "If you hadn't caught this, he could have slowly replaced the originals, and you'd have no proof of what you actually owned." The next clip was worse. Andrew and Nayen in our living room 2 months ago when he'd told me he was at a client dinner. She was wearing my robe, the silk one from our honeymoon in Paris. They were laughing about something on his phone. "Turn up the volume," I said, though my stomach churned. Andrew's voice filled the room. "She actually believed me when I said the conference was mandatory. I've trained her well. A few more months and I'll have everything transferred. Then we can stop this charade." Nayen's giggle was like nails on glass. "The prenup really says she gets nothing." "The prenup's irrelevant," Andrew replied. "She'll never fight it. Amanda doesn't have the spine. By the time she realizes what's happening, we'll be in Costa Rica and she'll be too broken to do anything about it." The courthouse corridors were designed to intimidate with their marble floors and mahogany paneling. I walked through them in my sharpest navy suit, the one Andrew had never seen because I'd bought it last month specifically for this moment. Rebecca walked beside me, briefcase in hand, while Marcus flanked my other side. We entered courtroom 4B at exactly 12:55. Andrew was already there, seated beside Richard Blackwood, whose expensive haircut couldn't hide the stress lines around his eyes. Andrew looked smaller somehow, his usual commanding presence diminished by wrinkled clothes and dark shadows under his eyes. He'd clearly slept at his office. When he saw me, his expression shifted from exhaustion to pure rage, but I met his eyes calmly. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Judge Patricia Coleman entered, her black robes adding gravity to an already tense atmosphere. She took her seat and immediately began reviewing documents, reading glasses perched on her nose. "We're here for an emergency petition filed by Amanda Mitchell regarding marital assets and spousal abandonment," she began, her voice carrying absolute authority. "Mr. Blackwood, I see you've just been retained this morning." "Yes, Your Honor," he stood. "We request a continuance to properly review the evidence." "Denied," Judge Coleman said flatly. "Your client allegedly abandoned his wife in dangerous conditions last night. Time is of the essence." She turned to Rebecca. "Counselor, present your evidence." Rebecca stood smoothly. "Your Honor, at approximately 8:47 last night, Andrew Mitchell deliberately abandoned his wife at a rest stop 37 miles from their home during a severe storm warning. We have audio recording of the incident." She played the recording through the courtroom speakers. Andrew's voice filled the space, cold and unmistakable. "You need a lesson, Amanda. Walking home might teach you some respect." I watched Andrew's face go white. Blackwood leaned over, whispering furiously. Andrew shook his head, gesturing wildly. "Furthermore," Rebecca continued, "Mr. Mitchell has been systematically hiding marital assets for 18 months. We have documentation of offshore accounts totaling $8 million and evidence of embezzlement from his hedge fund totaling $3.2 million. "Objection," Blackwood jumped up. "These are unsubstantiated allegations made without proper discovery." "Then let's substantiate them right now," Rebecca said calmly, producing a thick stack of bank documents. "Exhibit A through F, Your Honor. Wire transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands, all initiated by Mr. Mitchell without his wife's knowledge or consent." Judge Coleman reviewed the documents, her expression growing darker with each page. "Mr. Mitchell, did you abandon your wife last night?" Andrew stood, straightening his tie nervously. "Your Honor, there was a misunderstanding between my wife and myself. It's a yes or no question, Mr. Mitchell. I left her at a rest stop, but she had her phone. She could have called someone for help. During a storm," the judge's eyebrows rose. 37 miles from home. How very considerate of you." The courtroom doors opened and a man in a federal badge walked in, followed by 2 agents. Andrew's head whipped around, and for the first time I saw real fear in his eyes. "Your Honor," the man addressed Judge Coleman, "I'm Tom Chen from the SEC. I apologize for interrupting, but we have a warrant for Andrew Mitchell's arrest on charges of wire fraud and embezzlement. Given the evidence presented," Judge Coleman continued after the agents agreed to wait, "I'm granting the emergency injunction. All marital assets are frozen pending investigation. Mrs. Mitchell is awarded exclusive use of the marital home and temporary support of $10,000 per month. Mr. Mitchell, you are ordered to stay 500 feet away from your wife." As federal agents moved forward, Andrew exploded. "This isn't over," he shouted at me. I stood, speaking clearly. "You're right, the civil suits start next month." 4 months later, Andrew was sentenced to 96 months in federal prison. I used the whistleblower reward to establish the Phoenix Foundation, helping women escape financial abuse. 87 women found safety in our first 18 months. He tried to leave me powerless in a storm. Instead, I became the shelter.